Hi everyone, it's Rax. Diablo 4 has been going much better these days, but still, all the time I'm thinking about how could the game be even better. So today I'd like to cover 5 things that I would like to see in Season 5. And of course, we can ask for like major things like give us a new endgame progression system and stuff like that. But I want to talk about things that are mostly already in the game that I hope get further tweaked to make the game better, something that we might actually be able to see. So, for the very first topic, let's talk about probably the thing that I've heard people talk about the most in the community, and that is tempering. And I think the current system that Blizzard has doesn't exactly work for a few reasons. So, first of all, let's talk about how tempering actually works. So, tempering, I believe, gives you 7 total chances to hit 2 things that you need, right? So, you pick from 2 different categories. You get 1 free one in each category to get it tempered, and then you get 5 rerolls between those 2 categories to try to get it perfect. So when you're tempering, you don't get to choose the option that you've already won. Essentially, you have to re-roll it entirely blindly and take whatever the new thing that it gives you, and it gives you no choices. And then, of course, if you don't get what you want, depending upon how bad the roll is, it can just essentially hard brick an item. So, the problem for me in this entire process is not the fact that you can essentially brick an item. Bricking an item actually, I think, adds some value to a game. Yes, right now it really hurts when you find that double greater affix, triple greater affix item. You finally found it and you brick it in tempering, and you just want to throw your computer out the window. But I don't think that that's necessarily the singular problem with tempering. The problem is that in which how the RNG works and where tempering fits into items themselves. So one thing to understand about tempering is the thing that happens first. Because if you brick it, there's no point to continue. If you hit the tempering, then you will re-roll the affix. And this might seem like a foregone conclusion to you. You could just keep re-rolling until you get what you want. The problem is re-rolling is extremely expensive, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, actually, in the very next thing. But remember this $sign here. Then, of course, you put your affix on it. Okay, this is free. And then finally, you take it into the end game and you masterwork it. My issue is the biggest, like, hard bricking step of tempering of the entire game of a item's journey is in the first step, tempering it. That's where you want us to brick the item. You might say, well, Blizzard is doing us a favor and not making us spend the rest of these resources. Okay, fine. I guess that's fair. But the item doesn't even get a chance to get started. For example, when you're playing Path of Exile, the very last step after you build your beautiful item is if you're feeling really brave, then you can val it at the end. But at least the item's journey had a chance in the beginning before you decided to take the massive risk and brick it. So this is one of my big problems, is that tempering happens first, and it's where you can hard brick something. And the other thing is you truly have no say in how it goes. It's like a complete slot machine. You just hit the reroll button and that's it. You don't have the option to pick what you previously had, and you only get one option that spits out. It's not too cerebral at all, and that doesn't make it fun when you can't manipulate anything about it. So, I don't even need them to solve the fact that eventually, via tempering, you can brick the item. I just would like them to reimagine the entire process. So let me give you an example. I'm not saying this is the greatest idea ever, but one very simple option, obviously, is just to let you have the choice to keep what you previously had and keep the same system. Does that really solve the problem? Not really, but at least it gives you some control over your destiny, and you're not going to brick as many items. Or let's say it's something a little bit different. What if they took down the number of attempts? What if it wasn't 7? What if the total was 5 or 3 or something? And instead, when you rolled it, it either rolled multiple affixes within that certain category, or maybe it rolls all of them. And then you can see, well, I really need damage to close, but that roll that I got was terrible, but the percent damage roll that I got was perfect. So maybe I go with that. I don't have many rolls within this category, so I only have 1 or 2 more rolls left. But that would be more like soft breaking your item, having it very low within the threshold, rather than completely breaking it and giving you something that you don't want. Anyway, there's probably a million ideas. There's probably a million forum posts of different ideas on how tempering could work. That's just an example of something to consider with a new system. I'm interested to see their thoughts on this. The next thing that I want to talk about is resources in Diablo 4. So Blizzard has kind of admitted that a lot of things have not went the way that they wanted them to, and the way that we know that is they changed a bunch of it in the middle of the season. Gold was way too hard to come by. The end game of masterworking was way too expensive. And scattered prisms were impossible to get. And I went from having 0 scattered prisms to now I think I have 400 of them. So that was a bit of an overcorrection. And it happens. But there are still some problems with resources that to me don't make any sense. So for example, re-rolling affixes. First of all, they have said multiple times that they have lowered the threshold on how many millions of gold a re-roll can cost. Well, they did do that, it's true. But today I was re-rolling just some basic gear on my druid. I'm not kidding you. In the blink of an eye, I lost 100 million gold. I lost all of my gold. I couldn't believe it. I didn't feel like I re-rolled that much. It's not just the cost of re-rolling. It's also like the affix weights or something. Some affixes, I'm sure some of you know this, some affixes on certain item slots are rarer than like seeing an asteroid in the sky. I mean, you can literally roll like for CDR on a certain item for 100 million gold and never see it a single time, or plus to a certain skill that you need, and you just never see it. And all of the gold that you farmed is instantly gone. That's one example. Another example is after all their corrections, there was one resource that everyone seemed to be perpetually out of, and that's Angel's Breath. And Angel's Breath is very valuable for a ton of different things in the game, and there's not really very great ways to farm it. Usually you go to do events in Helltide, and that's the best way to do it, kind of. But again, it is a good thing that the resources have value. I'm not asking for the scattered prism fix where I go from 0 scattered prisms to 400 of them. What I'm asking for is this is a thing that I'm constantly bankrupt from, and I don't have a great way to farm it. And the re-rolling thing still seems very brutal, especially because some of these affixes, you have them weighted so strangely, you never see them, ever. So it's just like, I think this is another thing. It might take a couple of passes through to get it exactly right, but this is another thing that I think is not exactly where it should be. Now let's talk about uniques and uber uniques. I guess now they call them mythic uniques, I guess is the new term. So when Season 4 came out, Blizzard explicitly said the community and the theory crafters, thought that this would happen, and it did, that uniques would fall behind legendary powers. And this happened, and the reason why is legendaries can be tempered and uniques can't. And so Blizzard said, okay, that might happen. If it happens, we're going to look at it and see how it goes. So then the obvious, or maybe the most obvious thing to consider is, do you just allow uniques to be tempered? And there you have your problem solved, kind of, right? But I kind of agree with Blizzard's philosophy of, Everything doesn't need to be like everything. By the way, another thing we can add in here is yellows. They said that they had a plan for yellows one day, but where's the plan with that? Everything doesn't have to function the same way. If everything is the same, then it's boring and you don't really have a video game. So, how do we make uniques, for lack of a better word, unique? And how do we make them powerful enough so we're actually excited when they drop? Because currently, I'm not excited when they drop. So, there's a couple of things that we can do here. First of all, I think that they need to double down on what they've been doing lately rather than what they were doing before. What they are doing lately is they're being much more brave with uniques. A unique that we saw this season that they created is Fractured Winterglass. Fractured Winterglass. You throw a frozen orb, it summons your conjurations. Your conjurations shoot frozen orbs. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a build-defining, crazy-ass unique that makes the game fun and makes you very excited when you finally find it. Not, this unique gives you 10% attack speed per stack, stacking 3 times. That is so boring and unimaginative. We need to make uniques great again and come up with some crazy-ass stuff for all of the different classes. Also, we need some kind of defining thing for uniques. Maybe it has those crazy powers. What is going to be that defining thing about uniques that legendaries don't have? Do you raise the magnitude of the powers far beyond a legendary? Do you give them unique powers that you can't find on legendaries or via tempering? What is the thing that we're doing? But one way or another, I need the creativity to be ramped up like they've been doing lately to make crazy uniques. And I really need to understand where do they fit into the game so I can feel excited when they drop. By the way, while we're talking about mythic uniques, Blizzard actually fixed part of my problem. Part of my problem with mythic uniques is some of them just suck. Like the Tyrael's thing, the thing that was shooting the bolts everywhere, the bolts didn't do any damage. No, people were struggling to find any build where Andariel's was good. There was like a rogue build or something, but Andariel's is not doing very well. Really, like Shaco and Starless Skies, by the way, Starless Skies had to be redone, were really the two that people were mostly going for. Now we're starting to see some of the grandfathers emerge with some of the like whirlwind changes and stuff. But I need these mythic uniques to be incredible. I need them to be like Mage Blood or Headhunter in Path of Exile, where you are truly ecstatic to acquire one of these. Another thing, this is in Torchlight 2, I believe, and it's even in Diablo 3. In Diablo 3, when it drops, you get this red beam, holy beam of light when you get a primal ancient. This is a god item, just a red beam of light from the heavens, just shooting particles everywhere. It gives you a nice dopamine hit. You want to know how you identify mythic uniques right now? Uber Duriel drops 300 uniques on the ground, and you pick them all up, and then you mouse over all of them, and or whatever, and you pray that one of them is a mythic unique, and then you say yay. That really, really kills the hype. I need Blizzard to put way more effort into making this way more exciting, and for the actual item to be way better. Okay, so let's go to class balance. Now, here's what I don't mean. I don't mean like the obvious thing of, oh, no one is playing Barrage Rogue, so let's just buff Barrage Rogue. I need them to do more of the things that they have been thinking about, like, for example, with how they finally addressed for the first time in a year that Necromancers are very brutal to play for two key reasons. They're the minion class, and the minions suck. Makes no sense. And they're so slow. Like that finally now Blood Mist like doesn't hinder your movement. Now you can actually move faster with Blood Mist and things like that. So, first of all, I am not oblivious to the fact that this is a very difficult thing to do. Every class needs to have its own fantasy. It needs to play differently. So how do you balance the classes playing differently while not letting the classes fall behind in certain areas? I can give Blizzard a pass here because to me, if I was a game designer, I would imagine that this has got to be one of the hardest things to get right. Any lever that you pull anywhere else in the game with items or unique, it probably also affects class balance. You got General Grievous barbs with 4 weapons that you have to account for all the time and different things. And then, these sorcerers are hitting, infinite flame shield and they actually immortal, can't die because they have so many CDR rolls with their tempering and this and that. Then you have to worry about stuff like that. So I'm not saying that this is an easy thing, but let me give you an example that I encountered today. I played the brand new Pulverized Druid. They gave massive buffs to it. The class did feel better. And one of the things before with Druid that was a massive problem is with Pulverize, you have 2 options. You either overpower and hopefully you crit with it, or you don't and you do no damage. So when I read the patch notes, they gave Pulverize a lot of damage, and they also improved some of the ways for you to be able to overpower. That way, you're not feeling like you're getting these really bad hits. Okay? I went in and I played 1 to 100 Pulverized Druid. I did it in 4 hours and 26 minutes. 10 minutes of it was to a glitch. I'll report to Blizzard. So it's like a 416, and the Whirlwind Barb did 358. So it was actually a really good time. However, I had a major problem. When my Druid was first getting started, and I didn't have perfect gear, and I didn't have perfect aspects or whatever, when I would not crit and not overpower, when I just hit the monsters normally, I would hit for 40,000. You want to know how hard I would hit if I would overpower and crit? I'd hit for 2 million. Do you see the difference? 40,000 versus 2 million. And so it was nice that I'm hitting for the 2 million more often. But when my gear was not very good and when I was leveling up and before I got, my correct spirit boons and right powers and the paragon and this or that, the amount of times that I would hit for this value instead of this value was more often than you might think. If I'm fighting a boss and I keep hitting him for this value, it turns into a very, very long, drawn-out fight where on any other class, I would pretty much delete the barb on almost any, or the boss on any other class pretty much instantly on any other build. So again, going back to some of the core problems of some of these classes, it is nice that in the end game, you gave me way more abilities to hit for this number instead of this number. But what also needs to be considered is the tremendous gap between these numbers. So I don't even necessarily need you to buff Pulverize again. I don't need their overall damage to go higher. What I need is this discrepancy to not be so brutal. So I'm just making something up here. This might not be the solution, but something about just for the base Pulverize. Pulverize's damage gains 15% of the damage as if you would overpower, even if you don't overpower. So getting 10% of this added to this would still make this a decent hit and not make it feel so terrible when I'm sitting there just fishing for an overpower and I just can't hit it. It's not all about trying to give me ways to do this in the end game because a lot of people spend their time leveling up without these perfect characters. How many people watching this video take a while to get to 100? You don't have your codex filled out. You're not in the pit yet. And you're going for a while and you're hitting for these lower numbers when Blizzard says, oh, don't worry, when you have everything, then you'll start hitting for this. There's a lot of little things like that for a lot of different builds, for a lot of different classes that a lot of the theory crafters and the experts and even a lot of common people, the common casual people can point out that I hope Blizzard takes a look at as far as class balance. I'm not just talking about nobody plays Barrage, buff Barrage. You buffed Pulverize, but do you see this massive difference? Can we bridge the gap in an intelligent way? I'm not even necessarily asking for a buff. I'm asking for a redistribution of power. And then the fifth one, this is the easiest one to describe. I would imagine this is fairly easy to code, but with the way that Diablo 4 has evolved, there are actually very different setups and builds required for even a single class to enjoy the different activities that Blizzard has built. There is a huge difference between speed farming Nightmare Dungeons and Helltide versus methodically trying to clear the pit and trying to fight a boss at the end, and then standing still and fighting one tormented uber boss. That's already 3 setups for every build that's probably going to be a little bit different that everybody could use. This is something that Diablo 4 needs. Before, with their original game philosophy, with the leveling is the journey, without the lack of endgame content, people were still asking for this, but I kind of agreed with Blizzard. It wasn't as big of a priority then. But that is not true anymore. Now, with how the game has evolved, I think this is a must include. This needs to be prioritized. I would think that this has even moved higher in my wish list than a loot filter, because you drop me way less loot. I don't have to look through yellows currently, and my loot filter is I pick up the uniques and I pick up the greater affixes, and I just vendor everything else. By the way, we need a sell all button. That's another thing that we need. But these loadouts, my ability to instantly change my build and my skills and my paragon in order to do different activities, this is like critically important for the current state of Diablo 4. And I think as they continue to iterate on the game, it's only going to continue to rise in importance. It's in Diablo 3. It's in World of Warcraft. You built it many times before. We need this again. It's important. It's a huge quality of life thing. People are begging for it. Marshall's playing Warcraft and Rumble. That's great to see. We need loadouts, okay? These are 5 things that I'm asking for in Season 5. I hope a lot of these things are reasonable. I could ask for a million more things. I could ask for a huge endgame system, social features, an in-game auction house. Obviously, without real money, I'm sick of tabbing out third-party sites. Shout out to Crimson Market. Subscribe to them to get a PC. But these are 5 things that I think are reasonable to focus on, that I hope we see some changes for in Season 5. And I think we're getting a campfire this week, right? Is it this week at the end of the week? We're getting a campfire. I can't wait to hear what they're going to talk about in Season 5, and I hope it's going to be godly. What are you guys asking for? Do I have my list right, or am I a stupid idiot? Let me know in the comments. Thank you.